Good afternoon, students. Welcome back to this discussion on audit. So, in the previous session, we started with some of the overview of audit. We also discussed some of the very basic aspects around the audit in terms of how the audit is defined, what all procedures are required, what are the appointment requirements. Yeah. So we'll continue on this aspect around audit. Again, the agenda will nothing be on the very technical aspect, but will be about the nature, objectives, and this general understanding of audit today. Okay. So now, before we really move further, let's quickly do a recap of what all things we have covered. That is going on. So how will you define audit? What will you say is the meaning of audit? Over to you quickly. Great. So Kishan says it's an independent examination of financial information to express his opinion. Very good. Makwana says to provide reasonable assurance. Great. Aman, Meenu, I think they have similar sort of understanding. Priyanka, Harsh, Rajveer, they are also giving the same answer. Then I think Rajveer and Manisha have added that this expression of opinion is all about true and fair view. Correct? Yeah? Good. All right. So now, as around the audit, we discussed few more things. One was about the meaning of independent, because the auditor has to be independent. Then we also discussed about the meaning of reasonable assurance, because that is something you are saying is something which the audit is defined as. So can you quickly help me understand why is this independence requirement in place, or if you can just give me brief overview of this independence requirement, plus where does this reasonable assurance come into the picture? So how is it relevant? Over to you. Over to you. Okay, so Rajveer says there has to be an unbiased decision. Kishan says auditor should be independent, means he should be free from any sort of bias. Yeah, Dharni says there should not be any sort of influence. Okay, I think same is the understanding from Meenu, Priyanka, Kunal. Great. Yeah. Anyone else? Manisha says reasonable assurance helps in getting the trust of prospective investors. But can you tell me what do you mean by reasonable assurance? I think Rajveer has touched upon this. He's saying reasonable means only sampling. So in a way, it's not absolute assurance. Means 100% assurance is not there. Of course, it's a high level of assurance, but it's not something which you should consider as if it's 100% examined, 100% checked. Okay. Now, moving further. Now, can you tell me what are the prerequisites of audit? So let's suppose if you were to go and audit. So what are the few things which will come to your mind, which you believe are very essential for the audit to take place, without which audit will not be efficient, which is the, you can say, the basic and the core requirement in relation to audit. So with which you can just start. Very good. So there you come. Silesh says understanding of the entity, extremely important. Yeah. And that is something which we are talking about right now, that for you to begin the audit, for you to get going on this audit process, what is the first and foremost requirement? That's the understanding of the entity, understanding of the industry, understanding of the business. Because if you don't do that, if let's suppose for any reason you are not getting onto that, then of course there are a lot of things which may get missed out, without which you will not be very clear in terms of what all has been covered or what all has not been covered. So that's why understanding is the most important requirement. Okay. Then I think we also talked about some of the things which are not really included in the audit. You can say some of the limitations which this audit process carries. Can you just share some thoughts on that limitation aspect as well? Over to you quickly. quickly. Very good. So Anubhav says it's not an absolute assurance. That is a limitation in itself. I think same is the response from Dharni. She's saying it should not be considered as if it's an investigation. Great. Harshada says you cannot audit each and every entry. Correct. Silesh says then there's a time constraint. Audit has to be driven by the timeline. So you can't just take up the audit and keep going on. So it's driven by the time. So of course there's a timeline attached to this. Radhika says it's not in the nature of investigation. Priyanka says future events. Okay, they are also going to have some impact on the audit. Yeah, correct. Okay, great. Now, so there are some sort of limitations. We also understood what all things are covered, what all things are not covered. So, can you now help me understand that despite all of these limitations, despite all of these aspects that we have covered, do we really have any benefit of audit of the financial statements? Can we really say it's beneficial? If yes, what do you think could be the benefit? Over to you. Minu says moral check will be there. Dharni says it provides more comfort to the stakeholders. Priyanka says the information is considered to be of higher quality. Yeah, correct. I think same is the response from Kunal, Harshda. Yeah, so Priyanka, Radhika, Meenu, they are also adding that it also helps in detection of frauds and errors. Very good. Yeah, great. Now, as around the audit, I think we also touched upon some of the aspects which were related to appointment and over which I also received a lot of queries. So, can you now also help me understand that as around the appointment of the auditor, what all things you'll say are important to be looked at? Yeah, so when it comes to the appointment of the auditor, what is required to be considered, what is not required to be considered? So, how do you really get on to the appointment? What all things are required to be considered, whether this is mandatory or voluntary? Priyanka says it's generally appointed by the owner. Okay. What else? So that is one. It's appointed by the auditor. Anything else? Shreya says for companies, it's mandatory. Okay. What about others? Yeah. Kishan says in some cases it's constitutional and driven by the government authorities. Shubham says for partnership firm, it's appointed by the partner. All right. Anyone else? Yeah. So we can just simply say two things. For a company, it's mandatory. For non-corporates, it's not mandatory. It's driven by the relevant regulations. Yes or no? Yeah. So that's the understanding that we have as around the auditor, as around the audit, as regards the appointment. Yeah. Okay. Now, moving further. Now, let's talk about some of the points in relation to this appointment and some of these things that we have already discussed. Okay, so there's a term which is attached to the audit, and that is what we call as engagement. Yeah, so I think we didn't touch this point. So let's quickly get on to this discussion. So generally, in the context of audit, a term is used, a terminology is used. What do you call it as? Engagement. Now, what do you mean by engagement? Engagement means when you go engage somebody. For what? For doing some work. And if you are engaging somebody for doing the audit of work, that is what you call as audit engagement. Okay. So, engagement in the context of the discussion that we are having happens to be audit engagement. So, engagement, you can say it's a project, it's a work assigned to the auditor in relation to what? In relation to audit of the financial statements, or if at all there is some other scope, means there is some audit of any other thing. There could be audit of, say, inventory, there could be audit of only cash and bank. So, whatever be the case. Yeah. So, engagement means There is an arrangement between auditor and the entity for doing what? For doing audit, or you can say for providing audit services. Now, please remember that every time any project is taken up or any work is assigned, or if let's suppose any service provider will come and start providing services. So before that, what will he do? He will enter into an agreement. Yes or no? He will enter into an agreement. So if let's suppose there is an auditor and there is an entity. Now these are two parties. Okay. So when these two parties agree, they have an understanding that auditor will audit. So what does it mean? Auditor will provide audit services. And for the same, entity will make the payment, which is also called as audit fee. Yeah. So this arrangement between two parties is also required to be documented somewhere. So before the audit activity will start, before the audit will begin, or you can say before the engagement will start, means the project will start, this agreement will have to be signed between both the parties. And this agreement is what you call as engagement letter. You can say it's a letter of engagement. So what does it mean? Very simply, you can say it's an agreement. In the technical terms, this agreement is what you call as engagement letter. You don't call it as agreement. You call it as engagement letter. Okay. Everyone clear on this? Engagement letter. Clear? Everyone clear on this? Yeah. Any questions so far? Sure. Clear? Very good. So now what we will do is, just give me a minute. What I'll do is I'll just take you to some questions. Okay, so we can just pick up this sort of case scenario and we can now discuss this. All right, so now moving on to this case scenario. So if you want, you can always refer study material along with this. Otherwise, the study material with the case scenario is also available in front of you. Okay, so whichever way you feel comfortable. So if you want to refer the study material, you can go refer page 1.19. Okay, and we are looking at this case scenario 1. Fine? Yeah? Okay, so in the meantime, Kunal has a query. He's asking, sir, this engagement letter, can we say it's an undertaking between auditor and auditee on that the duly signed the agreement that auditee will provide all the correct information? So you can say that everything which is agreed between two parties is documented over there, including the point which you just mentioned. But it's not limited to the point you just mentioned. Okay. So what are going to be the management responsibilities? What are going to be the auditor's responsibilities? What all services will be provided? What will be the outcome? What will be the fees? Okay. What will be the reporting requirements? So each and every aspect. In fact, there's a separate auditing standard on this, which anyways you are going to cover in the subsequent sessions. Fine. Okay. So now let's look at this case scenario. Rohit, Gurpreet, Ali, and Goretti are friends since their school days based in Mumbai. They have cleared CA Foundation examinations in the same attempt and now plan to appear for CA Inter exam. All of them are avid news listeners and regularly keep track of business news even on social media. They are trying to understand new subjects, including auditing. Rohit, Gurpreet, and Ali have also started attending live coaching classes being conducted by the Board of Studies of ICAI. Goretti has not been able to join the LVC as yet, as she was away on a holiday with her parents. However, she plans to catch it up with her friends very soon. Ali had also joined the classes, but he had skipped some lectures. During one informal get together, their discussion centered around a new subject of audit. They discussed many things regarding its nature, scope, benefit, and other general practical issues. Goretti was regular in keeping track of audited results of various companies which are published in the leading newspapers. Her view was that audited financial statements of companies give 100% guarantee to different stakeholders. It is the main reason behind so much reliance upon audit process. But she could not understand why wrongdoings in the financial matters are being discovered after many years have gone by. Okay, so that's the understanding. Now, Ali also concurred with her in terms of this view and added that when the financial statements are audited, each and every transaction appearing in the books of accounts is verified. However, he could not give much clarity to Goretti. Gurpreet was of the opinion that audit was conducted on the basis of sample checking. He was also of the view that audited financial statements are not a guarantee against probable wrongdoings in financial matters of the companies. Not to be left behind, what has happened? Rohit also jumped in the fray, this discussion. He supported Gurpreet and also added something of his own. Okay? Yeah? Everyone clear on the fact pattern? So, this is how you are also going to be tested. Yeah? So, this MCQ, which will be there in the exam, those will be all case scenario based. Everyone clear? So, you need to first of all understand the case scenario. So, everyone clear on the case scenario, hopefully? Yeah? Everyone clear on the case scenario? Okay, so now let's look at this question one because you need to answer all of these questions. Huh? Gurpreet was of the view that audited financial statements are not a guarantee against probable wrongdoings in financial matters of companies. What kind of assurance does audit of financial statements provide? One, reasonable assurance, which means moderate level of assurance. Two, low level of assurance. Third, high level. Fourth, absolute. Over to you. What do you think is the correct answer? There you go. Very good. Everyone is saying C, except I think one response. Guram is saying A, and I think somebody mentioned D. Let me just see. Yeah, so I think almost everyone is saying C. Yeah. So I think we are very clear on this. So what do you mean by reasonable assurance? It's a high level. Can we say it's a low, moderate? No. Can we say absolute? Answer is no. Clear? So I think first one was very, very simple. Correct? Okay, great. Now moving on to question number 2. Rohit added that auditor can force an employee of the company to provide him required information and documents. Can he do so? Okay, so let's read the options. Yes, he can do so. It is necessary to obtain audit evidence. B, he can do so. There are express rights given to him in this respect. C, no, he cannot force. He can only request for providing him with necessary information and documents. D, no, he cannot force. He has no right of seeking information and documents. Okay, so forget the question of force. So that doesn't come into the picture. Over to you. For question number 2, what do you think will be the right answer? Siddhi says C. Okay, Kavita, Anubhav, Rajveer, Ayushi, Rajita. I think everyone is saying C. Kunal says A. Okay, Nagratan says C. Rajita saying C. Abhinav is saying C. C. What about others? Okay, Harshman is saying C. Mosam is also saying C. Ronak is also saying C. Yeah, so I think this one again is very simple. And why do you find this simple? If you would have understood this. Yeah, so if the concept is very clear. Yeah, Manisha, yes, of course. Now I can see your chat. What is your response? What is your answer? Tell me. C. Very good. Nisha is also saying C. Shweta is also saying C. Yeah. So many a times I'm receiving a lot of responses. Sometimes I may miss out. Divya is saying because he didn't complete actually write. So I couldn't understand. So in what context you're saying? Uh, but anyways, what is your response? A, B, C, or D? Over to you quickly. Aditya says C. Divya is also saying C. Very good. All right. So now, as far as the audit is concerned, yeah, so there's no force which is required to be used. But of course, pressure has to be put on the client to provide the information, but it has to be in a professional manner. Yeah. So professional manner doesn't require you to force or doesn't, sort of allow any sort of force to be used. That comes by default. Why? Because if you keep requesting, without which you will not be able to conclude, then that's a kind of force in itself. Okay, so that's why what should be the right answer? C. Okay, C. Hashida is saying, sir, what if employee working in the firm is not providing information to the auditor? Then the auditor will have to take the call. How important is that information? Is there any alternate thing available? Alternate procedure available? If no, then of course auditor will have no choice but to eventually find the outcome, means how is this going to impact the audit, and accordingly report that. Okay, clear? Great. So I think Anubhav has also answered the same. Okay, now moving on to question number 3. Ali had listened in one of the classes that audit covers all aspects of an entity and concluded that each and every transaction of the entity is verified by the auditor. Goretti also seemed to be in agreement with him, but she was of the view that besides this, it also meant that audit should be so organized to cover all areas of an entity. Which of the following options you can say is the appropriate one? One, to say only Ali is correct. B, only Goretti is correct. Yeah, so hopefully you have understood the question. You can say both Ali and Goretti are correct. D, both of them are wrong in terms of their understanding. Over to you. Tell me, over to you. Yes, over to you quickly. Abhinav says D. Kavita, Shreya, Sumit, they are saying D. Rajveer, Nisha, Binu, they are saying D. Kishan is saying D. Radhika says D. Bhanu, Ayushi, Dimple, they are also saying D. Very good. Mohan also says D. Guram also says D. Very good. Sunil is saying D. Shubham is also saying D. So I think here again, everyone is clear. Rajita is also saying D. Of course, both of them are incorrect in terms of their understanding. Right? Now, moving on to next question. Fourth. Okay. All of them also discussed about benefits of audit. Which of the following you think is not a likely benefit of audit? So please read the options carefully before you answer. Okay. Since auditing is connected to future events, audited information can be easily relied upon by users. Errors or frauds may be discovered during audit. Government authorities can make use of audited accounts for different purposes. Audit can help in bringing out deficiencies in maintenance of financial records. I think Rajita has assessed. Rajita says A. What about others? Mansa also says A. Kavita, Kunal, they are also saying A. Naveen, Vaishnavi, they are also saying A. Philip is saying A. Nis is also saying A. Harshman, Binu, Sumit, Anshi, they are okay, great. So I think everyone is going with A, and that appears to be the right answer. Why? Because if you look at option B, C, and D, they are no doubt the benefit of audit. Correct? So what is not really the benefit of audit? A. Yeah. So A therefore is incorrect, and A is the right option for this question. Okay. Yeah. Now, moving on to next question. Now, please remember, in the exam, similar sort of approach is going to be used as far as your testing is concerned. So you can now also understand and appreciate that this is how you are going to be tested. Okay, so in the exam, this is how you are required to deal with this. Anubhav is asking, sir, isn't Kurati thought about audit should be so conducted that it should cover all the aspects in question number 3? See, when it comes to all the aspects, so what do you mean? Because when it comes to the audit of the financial statements, anything which is going to have a financial impact is something which will form part of scope. Remember? That's what we discussed. Remember? Financial, yes or no? Is something which clear? Everyone clear? Okay, so I think everybody has started answering fifth, but let me just quickly read this, and then you can start answering. Okay. Goretti told her friends that she had read a news report about how a company had misled its auditors by producing some fabricated documents. Which of the following statements seem to be appropriate in this regard? It was wrong on the part of auditor to rely upon fabricated documents. He must have discovered it as the same falls within the scope of his duties. Although it was wrong on the part of auditor to rely upon fabricated documents, he cannot do anything in this matter. He has to report on the basis of documents provided to him. He has no duty in this regard. Auditor has to conduct audit by exercising professional skill, but he is not an expert in discovering the genuineness of documents. Hence, management consisting of dishonest persons may have led him to rely upon fabricated documents deliberately. D. Management cannot mislead auditor due to high level of knowledge and expertise possessed by him. The above is an outlier case, one of the rare odd cases. I think Priyanka has answered this. Rajita has also answered this. It's C. And I remember many of you had answered this. Yeah. Everyone mentioned C. Yeah. And that appears to be the correct answer as well. Yeah. Mohammed, Tanvi, they are saying C. That's correct. Yeah. So it has to be C. It has to be C. Clear? Everyone clear? Yeah. So here again, what we have tried to discuss in relation to this case scenario and in relation to some of the questions. So idea was to just get a feeler as to how the questions are going to look like. What is the approach that you need to follow? One thing which is very, very important for you to consider at every point of time is that it's not a theory subject which you can just go and mug up. Because if you do that, then some of these questions you will find very difficult to answer. Yes or no? Yeah. But if you just simply try to apply some of the practical things, or maybe this concept, if you understand, apply that in a practical manner, you just simply understand that, you will be able to answer easily. Yes or no? Yeah. So your understanding is most important. And that's where I believe you should be considering this as a practical oriented subject and not something which is a theory subject, which at the end you need to just mug up and conclude. That doesn't work. Okay. That is not really required. Okay. And that is going to be, in fact, more difficult approach as compared to if you just get on to the understanding of the application. Okay. Very good. So I think that is what Priyanka also mentioned. It's theory in understanding, but much practical in real corporate world. Exactly. And this is what you are also required to apply. Okay. Yeah. All right. So let's pick up one more question. Huh? Again, you need to answer this. Ziva Products is a partnership firm engaged in the trading of designer dresses. The firm has appointed JJ and Company chartered accountants to audit their accounts for the year. The auditors were satisfied with the control systems of the firm, carried out required procedures and necessary verification. In particular, they carried out sample checking of purchases, traced purchase bills to GST portal, and also made confirmations from the suppliers. I think there's some disturbance at the back end. I would request, I think, Rakesh, if you could just please stay on mute. Everyone, please stay on mute. Huh? All right, so I'll just move back. Okay, so now continuing on this question. So they were satisfied with the audit evidence obtained by them as part of audit exercise. An audit report was submitted to the firm giving an opinion that financial statements reflected true and fair view of the state of affairs of the firm. However, later on, it was discovered that purchase manager responsible for procuring dresses from one location was also booking fake purchases of small values by colluding with unethical dealers. Payments to these dealers were also made in connivance with accountant through the banking channel. The partners of the firm blamed the auditors for the futile audit exercise. In this case, what do you think? Are the partners, means the owners of the firm, correct? Do you agree with their viewpoint? Yeah. You can also imagine any probable reason for such a situation. Over to you. So, how would you like to deal with this? Now, here again, before you really get on to the solution, please remember that one type of the question was wherein we picked up the case scenario, we understood that, tried to answer few questions. Other one is that even if you are going to be, sort of subjective, it's not going to be MCQ. There again, you need to first of all understand the case scenario, understand the requirement of the question, and that's how you'll have to answer this. Yeah. So can you now understand that this subject is not really something which you should consider of mugging up? Okay. Yeah. Okay, great. So now moving on to the answer. Rihanna says no. Answer should be no. And I think she has also shared the justification, but I'm just missing out because a lot of responses I have received, but everyone is saying no. Nandini says no, the auditor did not did the audit of what the management had provided. Okay. Binu says partners are incorrect because auditor is not an expert in documentation. He can only go, so he can only do, or he can only check. I think this is what you're just trying to say, something which is provided. Siddhi says no, it's not an investigation going on. Jayender says it's out of the competence of the auditor. So of course, it's not something you should expect out of the auditor. So the thought process of the owners is wrong. Then Mohammed says auditor cannot verify purchases. So I couldn't understand as to, if you can just elaborate on this, Mohammed. Manisha says auditor isn't responsible for this fraud done in the management. I think you're talking about the company. Ayushi says no, audit is not an investigation. Radhika says auditor will only use their professional skill. I can see this detailed response coming up from Kishan. He's saying auditors acted within their professional responsibilities and followed the required auditing procedures. The discovery of fraud later on does not necessarily mean audit failure. Rather, it indicates potential internal control deficiency. Strengthening internal controls could help prevent such instances. Very good. I agree with this. Neeraj says no, the auditor cannot go through each and every transaction. It's not an investigation going on. Correct. So I think a lot of responses I have received. I think some of them I've missed out. Jayendra, Sunil have also answered. So your thought process is very clear. Yeah. So it's a situation about the internal controls of the firm, which are not strong, or you can say which are failing, which have failed actually. Now, because the internal controls within the organization were weak, that is why what has happened? Even their employees found that as an opportunity to get on with this fraud. Yes or no? Yes or no? As far as the audit is concerned, auditor has relied upon those internal controls. Yeah. For the internal controls, auditor cannot be held responsible. Of course, he need to apply diligence, which he would have done. But to say that because this fraud had taken place and the audit was also going on, so that's why auditor becomes responsible for this, will not be appropriate. Okay, clear? Everyone clear on this? Any questions, any doubts if you have? Everyone clear on this?
Sir,
Yes.
सर इन दिस कोल्यूजन आल्सो मतलब कोल्यूजन है तो ये लिमिटेशन इनहेरेंट लिमिटेशन हो जाएगी ऑडिट की.
See, inherent limitation, of course, we can say वो भी एक है, but at the same time, we also need to understand that some of these type of situations are very, very difficult to be tracked. Why? Because auditor will, of course, apply the diligence as we discussed. And audit doesn't mean that auditor can just skip the fraud. But the point is that something which he will be able to catch through the audit methodology he'll apply, through the procedures he'll perform. And if that comes to the knowledge of the auditor, he will definitely take care of that. But when it comes to the fraud becomes all the more difficult to be detected. Why? Because it's intentionally done. And when there's a collusion, it becomes all the more difficult. Yeah. So that is
Yes,
where
sir.
you can say it's very challenging to find out such things. And at the same time, you also need to understand that it's not the core duty that you have to go and find fraud every time, because idea is not to go for a find fraud every time. If that exists through the procedures which are performed, if that will come across, that will of course be reported. So that's how it works. Okay, clear?
Okay, sir.
Excuse me,
Anyone else?
excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Sir, is there any forensic auditing for the wrong document
Sorry.
which we can learn in future? Like forensic, sir, is there anything forensic auditing like that? Any subject for wrong documentation and the fraud which we can learn in future?
See, your voice is breaking. I'm very finding it difficult to understand. You are talking about some forensic audit, is it? Anyone else? Anyone else? Quickly. No? All right. So let's move further. Okay. Now, we'll try to understand some of the terms which are associated with audit. So there's a term called as assurance. Now, please remember that audit is nothing but a kind of assurance. So what do you mean by assurance? Assurance, you can say, is a project or an engagement in which there will be a practitioner. You can say it's one party. For example, a chartered accountant could be a practitioner. Okay. And what will he do? That chartered accountant will express a conclusion in relation to something that he will go check. Okay. And there will be a party for which this work will be performed. This project will be executed. What do you call that party as? Responsible
Management.
party. Management. Yeah. And why is this done? To enhance the degree of confidence of the intended users other than responsible party. Now, who are these intended users? So let's try to apply this in the context of audit. So you have auditor, then auditee. So you have got two parties, yes or no? Auditor and entity, two parties. Audit is being performed so that stakeholders get more comfortable. Yeah. So same goes with the assurance engagement. Understood what's the meaning of assurance? Everyone clear? Meaning of assurance? Yeah. So there will be three parties. There will be three parties. And there will be some subject matter. Now, what do you mean by subject matter? Subject matter means there has to be something which is required to be checked, which is required to be verified. Now, if that is financial statements, that is what you call as checking of financial statements, verification of financial statements. It could be related to inventory. It could be related to some internal controls. Yeah. So there has to be a subject matter. Then there has to be some criteria. Now, what is going to be the criteria? So every time there is a project, some criteria will be established, means you will apply some auditing standards, some guidances, laws and regulations you will use. Yeah. Basis which, what will you do? As a practitioner, as an auditor. So I'm just using this term audit because you will get more clarity with this term audit or auditor. That what will you do? You will obtain documentation, supporting documents from the client. And you will use those supporting documents. You will use those supporting documents or that information or any sort of material that you receive from the client for your testing purposes, for verification purposes. What do you call that as? That is called as evidence, or you can say audit evidence. Clear? Then, once this project is completed, the practitioner or the auditor, what will he do? Auditor will provide the report. The outcome has to be documented in the form of a report. That is what you call as assurance report. Okay. Now, some of these things that we just discussed in the context of audit could also be there in some other form. So what does it mean? That every time there is a checking, there's an examination, there's a verification of something, it doesn't mean it has to be an audit always. For example, if let's suppose the scope is reduced slightly as compared to audit, let's suppose the scope is reduced. So what do you mean by that? In case of audit, reasonable assurance is required to be provided. Yes or no? Reasonable assurance is required to be provided. But many a times, management of the company may not want reasonable assurance. So can you tell me why would this reasonable assurance be provided? When the management will require that work? Yes or no? Why would the auditor provide reasonable assurance? When the management will require that, company will require that? Yes or no? Otherwise, auditor on its own will not say that, okay, I'll provide reasonable assurance. Correct? Yeah. Now you may be thinking, but sir, it comes as a requirement of the statute. So can the auditor go change that? No, so we are not saying that the auditor will go change that. But we need to understand that every time, whether there is something which is required by statute or anything which is required by the management, this requirement has to be placed by the management to the auditor. Only then the auditor will perform the work and provide the report. Yes or no? Everyone clear on this? Yes or no? So this is how it will work.
Yes.
Correct? Now, at times, what may happen is management may say that we don't want reasonable assurance. We want assurance lower than reasonable assurance. Okay. We want assurance which is lower than reasonable assurance. In such a case, can we say it will become an audit engagement? Tell me. If let's suppose the assurance is not reasonable, do you think we will be able to call it as audit engagement? Everyone says no.
No,
Very
sir.
good. Yeah. But if let's suppose the nature of work is such, a chartered accountant or a practitioner has to come, there will be a company, he has to come examine some information, he will also use some methodology, he will also use some, say, standards, and he is also required to provide a report which is required to be signed by the practitioner. So in that case, even though it's not an audit, will you not say it's an assurance engagement? It's not an audit, but will you not say it's an assurance engagement? Tell me. Rajveer says, of course, sir, we'll have to say it's an assurance engagement. Now the question arises that what type of assurance engagement it will become. Yes or no? Because you may be thinking that, sir, one thing is understood. It will not be an audit. Another thing we have understood, it will be an assurance engagement. But what type of insurance engagement it will become? Yeah? Yes or no? So that's the question. See, that will again be dependent on the scope which the client will provide to the auditor. Okay. Now, please remember, every time what type of assurance engagement it will become, that will be dependent on what? Scope agreed between the company and the auditor. Okay. Yeah. Now, sometimes what may happen is that as compared to audit, wherein control testing is required, planning is required, a lot of procedures are required. Some procedures are cut down. Some procedures are cut down. So verification is required, but the verification, or you can say the approach, has to be narrowed down in a way that you will go and check, but your extent of checking will be lesser. Your extent of checking will be lesser. So in such a thing, in such a situation, if let's suppose you are assigned such a task wherein you are allowed to perform certain procedures, but not the same set of procedures which you would have performed in case of an audit. So do you think that your comfort will remain same or it will go down? Do you think your comfort will remain same or will go down? Anubhav says it will go down. It will go down naturally, obviously. Yeah. Such a type of engagement is called as review engagement. Okay, you can say there is another level or type of checking other than audit, which we call as review. Now, what do you mean by review? Please don't go by the literal meaning or the generic meaning of review. Because when it comes to the wording review, you may be thinking, sir, checking is not a review. Examination, can we not say it's a review? Of course, but we are talking about some technical terms which is used in the context of assurance. Okay, somebody asked me, sir, assurance means comfort only. Yes, of course, but currently this term assurance is being used in the context of assurance services, something which is defined by the auditing standards. Similarly, review is a terminology which is defined by auditing standards, or you can say review standards. So what do you mean by review? In case of a review, assurance is not reasonable. It is lower than that. Okay, it is lower than that. So it provides a lower level of assurance than audit. And that is why it is also called as limited assurance engagement. Now, please remember, assurance is given, but that is lower as compared to audit. So that's why, what do you call it as? Limited assurance engagement. And because the assurance is limited, so that's why, what is it that the auditor will do or the practitioner will do? Cut down on the procedures. Cut down on the procedures as compared to what he would have performed if it was an audit engagement. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So cut down on the procedures as compared to that he would have performed if this was an audit engagement. Yeah. Now, there are two types of assurance engagements that we have discussed so far. One is audit, second is review. Both of them are in relation to what? Both of them are in relation to the books of accounts, or you can say historical financial information. So both of them, they are performed in relation to what? Historical financial information. Historical financial information, can somebody explain me? What do you mean by this? What do you mean by historical financial information? Nisha is asking, sir. No, so that's what I just explained. And anyways, we'll pick up some examples. Huh? Yeah. Aman says past data. Or in very simple terms, can we not say it's all about actual data? See, there are two datas which are possible. Let's suppose currently we are in 24-25. Okay. Yeah. If let's suppose financial information of 25-26 is required, do you think it will be the actual number? If an entity is required to prepare their P&L, financial information, balance sheet for 25-26, do you think it will be based on actuals? Answer is no. Yeah. Why? Because it's all about future. For future, you can always estimate. You can always project. That is what you call as projected financial information. But when it comes to the period which is already gone by, for which everything has incurred, every transaction has taken place. Yeah. So something that you have already recorded in the books of accounts, or you can say for the past data. Even if we talk about 24-25 up to Feb, what will you call it as? It's all past data? Yes or no? Up to Feb, what do you call it as? It's all past data? It's all past data? Yeah, right? So are you now clear on the historical information and the projected financial information? Everyone clear on this? Yeah, everyone
Yes,
clear on
sir.
this? Yeah, everyone? Great. Now, please remember that when it comes to the checking of historical financial information, depending on the scope that we have, two types of engagements are possible. What are those? Either audit, wherein we go and provide reasonable assurance, or review, wherein the assurance is reduced, wherein the comfort level will go down, wherein the procedures will be cut down as compared to audit. Clear? Everyone clear on these two? Any questions on these two? Quickly. Quickly. All right, so let's look at this table. In this table, we'll try to discuss some of these points that we have just discussed. Hopefully, you should be getting some more clarity when we go through these points. Okay? Yeah? So let's try to go through some of these points. Reasonable assurance engagement means providing high level of assurance. Whereas when it comes to a review, it means providing lower level of assurance. When you say lower, what does it mean? Lower as compared to audit. Yeah. Now, when it comes to an audit, what will you do? You will perform elaborate, extensive procedures. But when it comes to review, so let me just write this is audit. This is review. So when you will perform review, so what will you do? Your procedures will be lesser. Correct? Yeah. When it comes to audit, so what will happen? Practitioner, CA, or you can say the auditor, will draw conclusions on the basis of what? On the basis of these evidences. Evidences that we just discussed in point number 2. Similarly, when it comes to a review, so what will happen? Practitioner, or you can say the auditor, or anyone who is doing the review, will perform or will reach conclusions based on the information, based on evidence, even if it's lesser. Correct? Yeah. Because in both the cases, conclusion has to be drawn, outcome has to be looked at, that is required to be provided in the signed form. Clear? Clear on this? Yeah. So now, moving further on this, what we can do is we can just quickly look at some of the aspects related to audit and review. Then I'll also move on to one more point, which is about another type of assurance engagement. Now, when it comes to audit, so I think we are clear that audit is generally the audit of the financial statements, which is also very commonly, popularly known as statutory audit. Where do you require review? Can you tell me? I'm sure some of you would be knowing about it. Where do you require review? Kishan says internal audit. No, because that's an audit. That's not a review. Harshada says investigation. How can you say investigation? Because in case of investigation, your procedures will increase or decrease as compared to audit. Just think about it, Harshada. Anubhav is saying where there is a shortage of time. For example, interim report. Yes, you can say that. Ashman says in case of limited assurance is fine. But can you just think about it? See, if you look at some of these listed companies, every quarter they are required to produce their results or not? Listed companies, they are required to produce their results on a quarterly basis. Yes or no? So for a quarterly financial information which they provide, therein, in most of the cases, what do? This financial information is reviewed by the auditor. That is not audited. That is generally reviewed. Why? Because one, that is required 4 times a year. At the end of the year, anyways, audit is going to take place. And of course, time is limited. Understood? Yeah. So where do you get to see this limited review? In case of reporting on a quarterly basis. Clear? And of course, if there is any specific work wherein the management wants review procedures to be performed. Yeah. I think
Sir,
Kishan has also looked at
I
that.
have
You
a
can
doubt.
just download, this is available on the public domain. You can just download the quarterly results of any listed company along with the limited review report. Yeah, clear?
Sir, I have a doubt.
Yes.
Sir, if it's required by the law, it is audit, and any other scenario, it is not audit, right? It's review.
I couldn't understand your question.
Like if it's required by the law,
Hmm.
the statute, it is audit. In any other cases, it is review.
So what I can understand is you're saying that if it is required by law, we'll have to call it as audit. So you're saying law will always require audit. Otherwise, it can be a review. Is that the question?
Yes, sir.
No, this is incorrect. Okay. As per the law, audit may be required or review may be required. So you'll have to look at the relevant requirements of the law. Now the question is that where does the law require audit? Where does the law require review? Or where does the law require anything else? We are not getting onto those things. Because at multiple places, law may have a different requirement. For example, I can of course give you examples. For a company, we discussed what does Companies Act require? Audit of financial statements of a company on an annual basis. Means financial statements of a company on an annual basis have to be audited for sure. But for the similar company, when it is producing its quarterly financial information, it's not mandatorily required to be audited. What can this company do? This can only get it reviewed. But does it mean that that annual requirement will not be that of audit? Of course, that will be there. Clear? So law may have either of these requirements. On the top of the law, company may also have some specific requirements, which is not driven by the law, which is driven by their own specific purposes. So that's how you need to look at it every time. Clear? Clear? Everyone clear on this? Rihanna is asking, sir, if I am asked to only verify a specific account like purchase account, then is it a review? See, it's not about checking only one account or checking the complete financial statements. It's about performing the procedures in relation to that particular area. Number one means what is going to be the extent of that procedures. That's one. Number two, when you will check that, means when you will apply your procedures, what is the expected output from you? Does the management want reasonable level of assurance or does the management want limited level of assurance? So that's how you need to look at it. Clear? Clear on this?
Sir,
Yes.
sir, a limited level of assurance, how much percentage of limited, sir? मतलब कितना लिमिटेड होना चाहिए assurance? जैसे reasonable assurance, एक high level of assurance हो गया, मतलब it
No, I could
include.
understand your question. So you are saying, sir, how do we decide? Correct?
Yes, sir.
Or
Yes, sir.
how do we differentiate? So in generic sense, what you have explained is correct. यहाँ high हो गया, यहाँ low हो गया. Correct?
How much
But what is
percentage?
high, what is low, how do we decide? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Now, for this to be discussed, there are two things I'll say. Of course, I'll just try to help you understand this point right away. But as you'll move further in your subsequent sessions, you'll get more clarity about what is going to be there in audit, what is going to be there in review. As of now, for the time being, because we have this limited time frame, so I can just help you understand in a way that when it comes to an audit, so there are few set of procedures, or I'm not talking about the listing of procedures, I'm saying category of procedures, which is called as testing of controls, which is called as testing of details, which is technically termed as substantive testing. Then there is another set of procedures which is called as analytical procedures. So in case of audit, all of these things you'll do. Now you may have a question, sir, we don't understand this. That's where I'm telling you, you'll get to know about all of these things as you move forward. But when it comes to a review, if I'm to now compare this, in case of a review, these testing of controls, testing of details is very, very limited. It's generally analytical procedures that you perform more. Okay. So your approach is more toward analytical procedures rather than substantive testing when it comes to a review. Now, there again, you may say, sir, what is going to be the extent? That is quite judgmental. That is for the reviewer, or you can say the auditor, to look at. So they will decide every time. Yeah. So this is how I would say broadly you can differentiate between these two. Clear?
Okay, sir.
Nisha is asking, sir, limited level means moderate? No. So limited means, of course, it's lesser than higher. So that's how you need to look at it. Okay. So we are not creating multiple categories. So don't get into that complexity. There are only two: reasonable for you and lower than reasonable. Means something which is lower than reasonable. That is what is going to fall under this. Clear? So now I think what I can do is we can take a break. Okay, we can take a break, and after the break we can continue. In the meantime, I think Kunal has a question. Yes, Kunal, please go ahead. Of course,
Yes, sir.
everybody is asking why are you left out? Yes.
Yes, sir. So, in short, we can say that that's a limited insurance. It's a short-term process. For kind of, we have to examine in our entity a particular area. For example, we have a claim any grants, so we have to reporting on that, like
No,
that.
no, 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 no. So that is what I just explained. So it's not about whether it's a limited process, short process, checking few areas. No, it's about having a difference in approach. That is what I told you. It's very difficult for you to understand within a day, because
Okay.
as of now you don't understand completely about audit. You don't understand what all things you are going to cover in audit. So that's why maybe you can make a note of this. Under audit, you have largely three set of procedures. Maybe you can write down. One, which you call as testing of controls. Second, which you call as testing of details. On a combined basis, this is what you call as substantive testing. And third, that you call as analytical procedures. So these are the three broad category of procedures that you perform under audit. But when it comes to review, it's more focused, or you can say approach which you apply as an auditor will be more towards analytical procedures. You will not be going to testing of controls. Testing of details will be very, very significantly reduced. So that's how you can differentiate between these two.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, I think Guram, I just answered this because I think everybody is asking the same question, and this is going to be my similar answer for everyone. Clear?
Thank you, sir.
Sure, sure. All right, so I think we can take a break now and then we'll continue, right? Okay, Vinu, we can take a break. Vinu, you're there? Let's break for 10 minutes. Huh? Sure. Hi, welcome back. So let's continue our discussion. All right, so we talked about review engagement, we talked about audit engagement. Now, there is another type of engagement which you call as engagement in relation to financial information, which is other than historical. Now, what is that? That is what you call as prospective financial information. For example, forecasts. Okay. Or if let's suppose you are not looking at financial information, you are looking at operations. And as far as operations are concerned, what are going to be the controls on those operations? If you are required to check that, verify that, perform procedures around that, wherein the financial information is not involved. So will you call it as audit? The answer is no. Will you call it as limited review? The answer is no. So that is again called as assurance engagement, depending on the scope that you have. Now, assurance engagement could be on prospective financial information, or it could be on the controls as to whether controls in the organizations are operating in an effective manner or not. Okay. Now, here again, please remember there is going to be a practitioner, there will be an entity, scope will be agreed, they will be, so you can say the practitioner will be performing the procedures on the basis of scope, and after doing the procedures, conclusions will be drawn and a report will be issued. Okay. So therefore, we can say broadly, there are 4 types. I would request everyone please stay on mute. Yeah, because there's some disturbance. I would request everyone please stay on mute. All right, so now. So one, we discussed when it comes to the checking, examination, verification of financial information. Depending on the scope that we have, we may call it as audit, we may call it as audit or a review. Okay. But in both the cases, please remember what is going to happen. Information will be historical, means based on past data. But if the information is not historical, say it's prospective, or there is no financial information, but it's all about controls, whether they are operating in an effective manner or not, and you are required to perform procedures on that, then will that be an assurance engagement? Yes. Why? Because assurance engagement is a broader term. It's a broader term. Within this term, you may have audit, you may have a review, or you may have other work depending on the scope that is there. Okay. Everyone clear on this? Yeah. So we can look at this question now. Okay. To get some more clarity on this. Management of exotic tours and travels requests its auditors, Raja and Company, to provide an assurance report on the financial information for the first quarter of an year by skipping required detailed procedures. Can Raja and Company provide such a report? If yes, what would be the nature of such a report? Third, would it be necessary for them to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence? Now, let me just spend some time on this sufficient appropriate evidence. And herein, the audit evidence word is not used. Okay. Now, let's try to understand this first of all, and then I'll get on to the solution also. See, the evidence means supporting documents which are required when you go examine something. Information that is obtained. Let's suppose if you are making inquiries, yeah, you are making discussions. All the information, whether that is verbal or in writing, what do you call it as? Evidence. That is what you call as evidence. Now, this evidence has to be looked at in two ways. One, wherein you will go and check its quantity. For example, say you are checking a particular ledger. Say you are checking a ledger, say bank ledger you are looking at, and you found there are 150 entries in that. There are total 150 transactions. Now, in this case, there has to be one minimum number of sample that you will select, because you can't say I'll just simply select 2. You can't just simply say I'll select only 15 transactions. There has to be some basis using which what will you do? You will select the number of samples. You can say sufficiency is all about quantity. Yeah. Then comes appropriate. Now, what do you mean by appropriate? Let's suppose when you are reviewing the bank, you have selected 50 samples. Very good. So out of 150, what did you do? 1/3 you have selected. So somebody may say a big number, a big sample has been covered. Good to understand. But if you look at the banking transactions, only 2 transactions, they cover approximately 40% of the total amount. Okay, and in this sample, one of those transactions is not picked up. So will this sample in such a case be considered to be appropriate? Tell me. The answer is no. Why? Because qualitatively, this selection has not been done. Quantitatively, everything was okay. But if somebody looks at the quality, he would always want to cover both the samples. Correct? So qualitatively, that is important. So that's why you can say when it comes to the quality. So what is the term that we use? Appropriate. Okay. So whenever you read this term, sufficient appropriate evidence or sufficient appropriate audit evidence, yeah. So this is what you mean by that. Okay. Now, using this thought process, let's try to answer this question. Now, in this case, what do you think? Over to you. Tell me. What is your answer? Rajveer says report will have to have low assurance. Okay. Guram says it has to be a review. Anubhav says yes, it can be done, but it has to be limited assurance. Shelja says yes, but it has to be a review. Manisha, Harshada, I think they are also talking about review. I think everyone is very clear. Yeah. Because the procedures are limited here. So that's why checking can of course be done, but it has to be considered as if it's a review. Okay. But review doesn't mean sufficient appropriate audit evidence, sufficient appropriate evidence will not be obtained. That has to be obtained. The approach has to be minimized, but within that approach, whatever is considered sufficient appropriate, that has to be obtained. Clear? Clear on this? Clear, everyone? Okay, very good. So now let's move further. I
Sir.
think, yes.
Sir, if we required sufficient and appropriate audit evidence, means full evidence अगर हमें required है तो फिर मतलब less checking कैसे होगी सर इसमें मतलब?
No, so when did we say full evidence is required? Did we discuss that? Did we say that?
Sir, sufficient.
Sufficient means it has to be of a reasonable quantity. It doesn't mean it has to be all the quantity has to be there. So we are not saying 100% checking. Sufficient doesn't mean 100%. Understood?
Okay, sir.
All right. So now moving further. Now, as far as audit is concerned, I think we have already talked about this a lot. So what are going to be the qualities which an auditor may have? Yeah, or which he should be having? Of course, he should be one who has to be a person of integrity. He has to have knowledge. He has to be tactful. Yeah, he should be cautious in terms of its approach. He has to have good temper. Why? Because he'll be dealing with a lot of persons. Yeah, discretionary aspects he need to consider. Industry knowledge he needs to have. Judgment he needs to require to be placed. Okay, patience is very, very important. He has to be clear headed. Why? Because a lot of decisions are required to be taken, conclusions are required to be looked at. Highest degree of integrity backed by independence. We have discussed this is of utmost importance. Yeah, without which one cannot really get into that. Okay. Then I think Rajveer asked me, see, it means to get onto the things in a clever manner because you need to get the information obtained. You need to reach to some of the things. Basically, you are a reviewer, you are checking something. You need to find out if there is any problem or not. Yeah. So you need to be tactful in terms of your approach. Clear? Now, what are the tools, or you can say, what are these guidances which are available to the auditor? We touched upon this, if you remember. See, when it comes to the audit or when it comes to any sort of engagement, some of the standards are available. Okay. Now, what are these standards? Exactly similar to accounting standards, you have auditing standards. Yeah. Accounting standards, do you all understand? I'm not asking you about accounting standards, but do you understand that what is the meaning of an accounting standard? Tell me. Yeah, everyone please. Yeah. So now what is the role of an accounting standard? To make sure that accounting is standardized. So that if a company is recording something, every other company will record it the same way. Similar transaction should be recorded in a similar manner by each and every company. Okay, standardization is there. For example, when you go to McDonald's, so any store you visit, what do you find? Everything is standardized. Furniture, interior, taste, okay, everything is similar. That is what you call as standardized. Correct? Similarly, for an auditor, what's been done? Some standardized guidances have been issued, which the auditor needs to use, which the auditor needs to apply, using which audit needs to be performed, or similarly review needs to be performed, or similarly any other assurance engagement needs to be performed. It's not a rule or regulation. No, it's not a rule or regulation. Can you say accounting standard is a rule or regulation? Tell me. The answer is no. So it's not a rule or regulation. You can say on a particular area, something has been laid out. For example, if you will go check revenue, how should revenue be reviewed? How should revenue be audited? If let's suppose tomorrow inventory is required to be verified. So what all procedures you should be performing on inventory? Means such procedures have to be performed for sure. Clear? Yeah. So for different areas, auditor is given guidance. Guidance in relation to what? Guidance in relation to audit. It's not a guidance in relation to accounting. It's a guidance in relation to audit. Or if it's a review, it's a guidance in relation to review. Or if it's any other engagement, it's a guidance in relation to any other engagement. Clear on this? Everyone clear? So have you now understood as to what do you mean by such standards? Yeah, broadly, have you understood this? Yeah. Okay, so Shreya is asking, sir, can we say standards are a professional manner in which something has to be done? Yes. You can say further to this, standardized manner, that this is the minimum level which has to be there. Okay, clear? Now, because we have different type of engagements, and as we discussed that audit is different from a review, and there may be another type of engagement wherein you are not doing audit or a review, you are doing something else. So that's why, what do you have? You have standards for everything. That's why, what do you have? You have standards for everything. You have standards on auditing, you have standards on review, you have standards on assurance engagements, and you have standards on any other engagements. Clear? Yeah. So now, let's quickly flip through some of these. Now, when it comes to an audit, now you may be thinking, sir, what are the topics which could be there? So the topics could be objectives of the auditor. Topics could be how the documentation is required to be maintained. Topics could be how do you go and understand the entity? That is a very, very important requirement. Topics could be details about the audit evidence which is required to be obtained. Topic could also be around the way report is required to be issued. Yeah. So you can have various topics for which separate auditing standard is issued, or you can say is available. Similarly, topic could be about review of historical financial information, for which you have a separate review standard, which are called as SREs. Okay. Topic could be about examination of prospective financial information. I'm talking about only examples. Huh? So that's why, what do you have? Standard on assurance engagement. Topic could be in relation to reporting on compilation of some financial information. Now, what is that? How is that required to be done? We are not getting into that. That is not really required. Idea is to just make you understand that you have some standardized guidances available. So whenever you go and perform such tasks, maybe as a reviewer, as an auditor, so you need to make use of these. You need to be aware of these, that these are something which are mandatory. So tomorrow, can you just simply skip them? The answer is no. Answer is no. Okay. Now, similarly, at times what may happen is management may ask you that only 3 procedures you will perform and you will check something. Now, please try to understand. Sometimes what may happen is you may want to perform audit, or you may have a scope of review. See, when it comes to an audit or review, so what will happen? Procedures, their nature, their extent will be decided by whom? Can you tell me? So when it comes to an audit or a review, as around the nature, extent of the procedures will be decided by whom? Can you tell me who will decide that? Very good. Dharni says auditor. It will be the auditor. Yeah. Management can ask you that provide me a report, say a review report or an audit report. But can the management define that for this particular area you will perform this procedure? When it comes to cash and bank, you'll only physically verify that. When it comes to a bank, you will not perform the reconciliation statements. Can the management do that? No. So in those cases, procedures are defined, decided by whom? Auditor. Correct? But in some other engagements, so I'm also talking about another type of engagement now. So don't think I'm talking about audit or a review right now. Okay. There could be another type of engagement. In which case, management may define that only 3 procedures will be performed by the practitioner. I'm not talking about audit here. It's not an audit. Management may want that you should come, perform these 3 procedures, and let me know the outcome. Let's suppose management says that I want my bank reconciliations to be checked. So what you will do is you will obtain the bank reconciliation, you will obtain the bank statement, you will check the reconciling items, you will check the closing balance with the balance confirmation statement obtained from the bank. In this case, there are certain procedures which the management has defined and which have been agreed upon with the practitioner. Yes or no? There are certain procedures which the management has defined and which have been agreed upon with the practitioner. Correct? Yes or no? Everyone clear? So there is a set of procedures which have been defined. Yeah? This type of engagement is what you call as AUP. AUP means agreed upon procedures. Means only those procedures will be performed, nothing else. And on the basis of these procedures, outcome will be reported to the company. Outcome will be reported to the entity. Clear on this? Now, sometimes management may also require these type of engagements. So this is what you call as standard. So again, for these type of engagements, we have another set of standards. What do you call as? We call it as standards on related services. Yeah. So for every type of engagement, you can say standards are available. Clear? For every type of engagement, what do you have? Standards are available. Okay. So for example, you have engagement to perform agreed upon procedures regarding financial information. So there is a standard SRS 4400. Clear? Yeah. So these are only examples. And examples are just to give you a feeler that what are the areas and what does that standard talk about. Clear? Everyone clear on this? Yeah. Any questions so far? Any questions so far? No? Tanvi says clear, sir. Very good. Now, moving on to another very important aspect. So we are talking about a professional firm. Professional firm means a firm of chartered accountants, whether it's a sole proprietorship firm or whether it's a partnership firm. See, so far, each and everything that we had discussed was in relation to an engagement. Yes or no? Dhani, I'll come to your point. Yeah. So just give me a minute. Let me just get through with this. Then I'll come to your query. Okay. See, so far, all of these things that we have discussed, all of these standards that we have discussed were in relation to what? They were all in relation to an engagement. Correct? They were all in relation to an engagement. Correct? Now, engagement could be an audit, review, agreed upon procedure, or something else. We are not talking about it. Correct? In all of those cases, two parties were there. Yes or no? At least auditor, auditee, practitioner, entity. Yes or no? But now we are not talking about the entity. We are talking about that firm of chartered accountants. Do you understand that for a company, some SOPs are there, standard operating practices? They have some processes, policies, procedures as to how do they need to operate? Yes or no? Yeah. So if you look at any company today, whether it's large, small, they will have some policies, procedures in place. Okay, their modus operandi, how do they need to operate, what are their objectives? Okay, each and everything, whether they document that or not. What do you call it as? Standard operating practices, or you can say SOPs. Correct? Now, similar to this, or you can say that this similar SOP is also required to be maintained by the CA firms. The firm of chartered accountants, they also need to have some systems, some policies, procedures in place. And who defines that? So you can say there is a standard again on quality control. So there's a standard on quality control. It defines that. It defines that a firm of chartered accountant should have a leadership. Okay, there should be a training methodology. Yeah, so there should be some norms about the HR practices as to how this firm has to function, how this has to provide quality in terms of the services, how this has to maintain integrity while providing insurance services. For all of these aspects, standard is in place, which is called as standard on quality control. Now, please remember, when we are talking about standard on quality control, this is not in relation to an engagement, but this is in relation to that firm, that entity. Firm means professional firm, firm of chartered accountants. So we are not talking about the company here. Clear on this? And what does the standard talks about? This standard talks about how the quality needs to be maintained, how the controls need to be in place to ensure that there is a quality in the services which the professional firm will provide. Clear on this? How the quality will be there in terms of the professional services which the professional firm will provide. Clear on this? So this is what you call as standard on quality control. So again, we are not getting into too much details around this. So this is something which we need to look at. Clear? Yeah. Now, in relation to this, what we can do is we can look at this question now. Okay, over to you. CAP Babu is conducting audit of financial statements of Quick Buy Private Limited. Okay. He was not able to obtain external confirmations from certain debtors due to practical difficulties and peculiar circumstances. Now, just to help you understand that whenever an audit is performed, and when it comes to the debtors, what the auditor will do is auditor will write a letter to those debtors to confirm their to confirm their closing balances. Okay, so that is a set of procedures, you can say. So currently, this firm, this auditor, is not able to obtain those confirmations from certain debtors, not all, from some debtors. And it appears there are some practical difficulties due to which it's not possible. However, such a procedure is mandated. So where does this procedure come from? Auditing standards. So you can say it's a mandatory audit procedure. Unable to obtain external confirmations from these debtors, he relied upon sales details of those parties, their invoices, e-way bills, and also traced the payments from those parties in the bank accounts of the company. So what this chartered accountant has done is, or you can say the auditor has done is, external confirmations were not. Okay, so what did he do? He looked at some other documents, invoices, e-way bill, payments which are received from those debtors, and all of these information which he has obtained, he found that to be reasonable. So he was reasonably satisfied with this information, which you call as audit evidence. Now, in this case, is there any other reporting duty cast upon him relating to not following a mandated procedure in any of the standards on auditing? Over to you. What do you think? Quickly, over to you. What do you think? Is there any other reporting duty cast upon him relating to not following a mandatory procedure in any of the auditing standards? Basically, you need to comment upon this. How would you deal with this situation? Anubhav says maybe he can mention it in his report. Okay. Prem says no, because he is satisfied with the audit evidence. Mohammed says he has applied technical and professional skill. But what is your conclusion? What is your answer? Yes. What about others? Quickly, everyone. What do you think? How will you deal with this? Your comments on this are required. Kunal is saying no. Okay. What about others? Rihanna says no, but it's better to obtain. So you are saying it's recommended. Is it? Okay. Rajveer is saying he has to add this. So he's saying report. Okay. Manisha says disclose this in the financial statements. So then I think you're talking about accounting. See, please remember, every time when you are talking about disclosing something in the financial statements, are you talking about the audit or the financial statements? So that means, are you talking about the audit or the accounting? Because disclosing something in the financial statements is the responsibility of whom? Management or the auditor? Tell me, whose responsibility is that? Management. So if you are saying that this needs to be disclosed in the notes to accounts, so can you say it's an audit responsibility or auditor to look at? No, so that's the management responsibility, isn't it? Yeah. So we are not asking you about anything in relation to the accounting here. We are asking you in relation to the audit over here. So please remember, every time when you get on to something, you need to apply this thought process. Okay. Tanvi says he will obtain reasonable assurance. Okay. Binu says, so I think I missed some part. Arijit says auditor will report. Okay. Rakesh says samples are adequate, so no will be the answer. All right. So let's try to look at this. See, he is required to document how the alternate procedures have been performed. Please understand, what was the requirement on the part of the auditor? To obtain external confirmations. Okay, so what was the procedure? To obtain this, he should tick this. But whether he has been able to put a tick mark against this procedure, Tell me whether he is able to put a tick mark. The answer is no. Is it a mandatory procedure? Is it a mandatory procedure? Anubhav, Rajveer, they are saying yes. Prem says yes. So that means it's a mandatory procedure. If the mandatory procedure is not possible, say for some reason, then the auditing standard says you can go and perform alternative. Okay, this is allowed. So the auditor, what can do is, auditor can always go to alternative procedure. But that alternative procedure should give the auditor sufficient appropriate audit evidence. Okay. Now in this case, auditor was unable to perform this. So that's why if he is moving to alternate procedure, he has to document this, that this external confirmation can't be performed. He is moving on to alternate procedure. And how this alternate procedure is giving the required level of comfort to the auditor. Okay, clear? So this, of course, has to be documented by him. Only then his, you can say, sort of procedure will be completed in respect of some of the things which he is required to look at. Clear? Now what we can do is we can just look at, I think, one more case scenario. So let me just take you to one case scenario. Aditya, let me just come to your query. I just saw your query. Just give me a minute. Yes, Aditya, if you can just repeat your query. Yes, over to you. What's the question? Do you have something? No? Okay, Anubhav is saying, sir, is my answer correct? I will be satisfied, but however, I'll, no. See, if the auditor is satisfied, then why will there be a reporting in the auditor's report? So this is contradictory. Clear? Okay, so let's look at this case scenario and then I'll come to your queries further. Okay. Me and You Private Limited has been newly incorporated. The plant of the company has recently started production with the help of funds provided by a bank for purchase and installation of machinery. Okay, so it's a new company. It appears they are in the process of setting up some plant. That plant has recently also started production. Further, the company is also utilizing working capital credit facilities from the same bank. So one, they have obtained loan for machine. Then they have also obtained working capital credit facility. In relation to what? In relation to their working capital requirements like purchase of material, labor payment, etc. However, just within 6 months of its operations, management feels that the working capital funds are inadequate and the situation is creating liquidity issues. Can you tell me what is the meaning of liquidity issue? Quickly, can you tell me what is the meaning of liquidity issue? Over to you.
Not having sufficient cash.
Very good. So that means there's a cash constraint. Further, the management has approached its bankers and requested for enhancement in the working capital credit facility. Means they are looking for some more funding from the bank. The bank manager is insisting upon financial statements of the company for the half year along with a report providing assurance in this respect duly signed by the chartered accountant as audit is far away. So the banker is saying, okay, I want to look at your financial statements, financial information. Banker understands audit will be done at the end of the year and it's half year only. So what he wants is that the company should get this sort of verified from a chartered accountant, which will not be an audit, but which will be another assurance engagement. It also requires projected financial statements for the coming years along with a report from CA providing assurance regarding these projections to consider request of the management. So now one is, let's suppose this period is covered from April to October. Or you can say this period, let's suppose, is 1st October to, or you can say 1st September to 28th of Feb. Let's suppose this is 1st September 24 to 28th of Feb. 6 months are covered. Now they also want to look at the future information. Means how the financial performance will go. Accordingly, the bank will assess. Yeah. So that is what is called as projections. Okay. Now, further on this. Management approaches CAP, who has qualified recently and started practicing, reports providing assurance for half-year results and projected financial statements are sought from this chartered accountant. Management provides necessary information to CA, any records that he requires. Assume in the above case, company only provides trial balance, financial statements in draft or preliminary form, along with the accompanying records for the relevant half year to CAP, and requests him to provide duly signed financial statements with a report for mutually agreed professional fees. Okay, so that appears to be the scope. Now, in this case, first question. The management of the company has engaged this CA to issue a duly signed report for half year as referred to in the last para of case study. Which of the following standards, if any, are relevant for this chartered accountant? So in a way, you need to understand the nature. Is it a review? Is it an audit? Is it agreed upon something? Or you'll say no, there is no standard. Over to you quickly. I think Rajita has answered this very quickly. I can see a lot of responses. Ayushi, then Nisha, then Shelja, Meenu, Tanvi, Manisha. I think everybody is saying C. Bhartika is saying C. Pooja says C. Vaishnavi. Ritik is saying C. Kunal says C. Great. I think I saw a couple of responses for A. I think those were two responses. Govardhan is saying C. Philip is saying C. Bharat is also saying C. Very good. So I think it's clearly evident. Yes or no? So do we need to even think about it? It's immediate answer for us. Rakesh is saying it's AUP. Correct? Yeah, very clearly. Okay, now moving on to question number 2. Which of the following statements is most appropriate? Now, please remember, whenever you will have such type of questions, wherein you need to choose the most appropriate one. So what will happen is, they will be moving you in a similar sort of direction. Or you can say they will be trying to convey same set of understanding with a little tweak. Yeah. So you'll have to choose the best out of these. So it will not mean everything is wrong. Maybe all the points are correct, but which one is the most appropriate? So that's how you need to assess this. CA can assist management in preparation of financial statements of the company. However, issue of a report in such a case is outside the scope. CA can assist management in preparation of financial statements and he can issue an audit report. CA can assist management in preparation of financial statements and he can issue a compilation report. Responsibility of preparation of financial statements is of the company's management. CA cannot assist management in preparation. However, he can issue a review report. Over to you. What do you think is the correct option? Binu, Rajveer, Sunil, they are saying D. Ayushi says C. Now, please remember, in this case, CA is not assigned assurance engagement. Okay. So, some of you are moving on to D. See, CA cannot involve in management function when he is providing assurance. But is he required to provide any assurance? No. So, when he is not providing any assurance, why? Because he will issue a compilation report. In that case, he can of course get into the preparation. So our answer should be C. Answer should be C. Clear? I think same is the response from Ronak, Dharni. Yeah? Great. Now moving on to question number 3. Question number 3. In the above said scenario for issuance of signed financial statements for half year by CA, as discussed in the last para of case study, identify the most appropriate option. SQC1 is not applicable as CA cannot issue audit report. SQC1 is not applicable as CA cannot issue review report. SQC1 is not applicable, I'm reading D, as CA is barred from issuing any report in such type of engagement. C, SQC is applicable in such type of engagement as well. What do you think will be the right option? Over to you. Over to you quickly. Meenu, Sumit, they are saying C. What about others? Miss Aditya, they are also saying C. Ayushi says C. Binu, Harshada, they are saying C. Rihanna is saying C. Manisha is saying C. Divya, Shelja, they are also going with C. Arijit is saying C. Nagratna is saying C. Govardhan is also saying C. Yeah. Okay. Rajita is also saying C. Vaishnavi is also saying C. Great. Now, please remember about SQC. What did we discuss? Is it specific to an engagement? Tell me. For SQC, is it specific to any engagement? No. It applies to a CA firm. So whatever work CA firm will do, SQC will have to be in place. Yeah, because it's all about the overall quality control of the professional firm. It's not specific to an engagement. So that's why what should be the correct option? Option number C. Option number C. Clear? Everyone clear? Okay, now moving on to question number 4. The banker of company has also requested for projected financial statements for coming years along with a report from CA regarding these projections to consider request of management. Which of the following standards you think will be relevant in this situation? Standard on review. There's no standard on this. Agreed upon procedure. Standard on assurance engagement. Over to you. Yes, quickly. Over to you. What do you think will be the correct option? I think many of you mentioned D. Prem is saying D. Ritik is saying D. Ayushi is saying D. Vaishnavi, Kavita, Kunal, they are also saying D. Sumit is also saying D. Yeah. Nisha, Philip, they are also saying D. Bharat, Aman are also saying D. Meenu, Thomas, they are also saying D. So I think D is the correct one. Why? Because this is definitely an assurance engagement. Yeah. Agreed upon, we discussed. Of course, it's not there. When it comes to projected financial information, if the report is required to be issued, procedures are not agreed upon. So what will you call it as? Standard on assurance engagement, or an assurance engagement to which standard on assurance engagement will apply? Yes or no? Yeah? All right. So now moving further. Question number 5. Suppose CAP also accepts the work of issuing projected financial statements with a report to be signed by him. Okay. Management has projected a turnover of 100 crore for the next year, 150 crore for next to next year, and 200 crore for following year. Yeah. So in this order, the turnover will move. Next year 100, next to next year 150, next to next is 200 crore. And in the current year, the turnover is 25 crore for half year. Identify the most appropriate option that you will apply considering this fact pattern. CA has to satisfy himself regarding arithmetical accuracy of projected data. CA has to satisfy himself regarding reasonableness of assumptions underlying the projected turnover and its consistency with actuals. CA has to satisfy himself regarding arithmetical accuracy along with its proper presentation. CA has to satisfy himself regarding reasonableness of assumptions, its consistency with actuals, disclosures, and presentation. Which one out of these 4 options you think appear to be the most appropriate one? Over to you. Over to you quickly. Which one out of these? Ronak, Prem, Thomas, Mohammed, they are all saying D. Rajita is saying D. Kavita, Vaishnavi, Arijit, Kunal. Can you tell me why it should be D? So, of course, you have been answering a lot of questions. Huh? Can you also help me understand why it should be D? So, I'm not asking you to compare these with other options. I'm saying, why do you think D is the correct option? Over to you, quickly. Quickly. Why do you think D is the correct one? Aman says D is more accurate. Of course, that is correct. But why is that correct? Why is that correct? That's the question that I have asked you.
Sir,
Yes.
I'm audible.
Yeah, you are audible now.
Actually, sir, yeah, this is only an assumptions.
Right.
So this my option D is correct, I think.
No, but why? Question is, why do you find that to be most appropriate?
This is only assumption, and the turnover is all only projected.
So let's try to understand this.
Yes.
See, when it comes to the future information, can you be 100% sure as the management when you will prepare the numbers for the future? The answer is no. Can you say today that my turnover is going to be 100 crore?
No.
You can't do that. So what will you do? You will apply some thought. You will use some assumptions. It's an estimate. So you'll say my turnover today is 50 crore and I'll increase the capacity. Or if I increase the capacity, if I increase the manpower, if I'll have more contracts, then my turnover. So these are what you call as assumptions. So as a chartered accountant, you'll have to understand those assumptions, whether those assumptions are appropriate or not, because the management may say that it will become 500 all of a sudden. So there has to be some assumption. Number one. Number two, even if assumptions are there, it has to be in consistency with the actual data. So in the last few years, if the turnover has been 50, 40, 30, 50, 40, and all of a sudden you take it to 200, so will that look logical? No. So there has to be a consistency in terms of how the numbers are going on in the past years and how they are going to increase. And because it's all about projections, that's where disclosures become all the more important. Why? Because CA will ensure everything. But as a management, you need to make sure that appropriate disclosures are available for the users. And the CA also needs to ensure those disclosures have been given in an appropriate manner. Clear on this? Everyone clear on this? Yeah? Everyone clear? Great. All right. So I think with this, what we have tried to do is we have just tried to, sort of cover this first chapter, which was more of an overview. As we discussed, yeah. So it's largely an overview of what audit is all about. How do you understand audit? The meaning of audit, its objective, its benefit, its limitation, all of these things. Okay. As you will move further in your subsequent sessions, you will start getting more and more clarity around some of these things that we have covered. But please remember, audit is completely interlinked. There are a lot of things that you are going to cover, but all of these things you'll have to understand that it's a part of one process. Yeah. So what we can do is we can now look at your questions, your doubts. Okay. So I'll move on to your questions, doubts. Yes. Over to your questions. Any doubts, any questions that you may have? Okay, so I can see this query coming from Dharni. She's asking, I have a doubt. The assurance agreement dealing with matters other than historical financial information should be considered as an audit or a review. No, it's neither of them. Means neither an audit nor a review. It's considered as a third type. You can say that's how it's defined. Okay. Wherein the assurance level, because it's neither an audit nor a review, is of a third type altogether. Understood? Yeah. So you should not think that every time some assurance service will be provided, so it can be only of two types. So you can say there is also a third type which is available. Yeah. Then I think Prem is asking, sir, are we going to learn standards like SRES? See, this audit, this entire audit that you have, this is nothing but based on auditing standards. In fact, some of these things that you have covered in the last two sessions, that is also based on auditing standards only. Understood? Yeah. So it's all auditing standards. Govardhan is asking, sir, are we supposed to write all the slides? No. So see, these slides will be available to you. I think by today they will be uploaded on the portal. So you don't need to write it. If you want a reference of that, that will be available to you. But it's always appropriate to prepare your own notes. Okay, and the more and more clarity that you want, that is available with the way you want that to be documented. Of course, it's available in one form for one set of documentation. If you want to refer it, that will be available to you. But if you want to keep some different sort of notes, maybe in a more elaborate manner, or maybe in a more summarized manner, maybe with some examples, so that is your approach. So accordingly, you need to document it. Anubhav, I'm not sure about the number. So there are a lot of auditing standards. Huh? Any other questions that you may have? If you want to speak, you can feel free to speak also. I can see Harshdeep raising hand. Yes, Harshdeep, please go ahead. Please ask questions.
Hello, good evening, sir.
Yes.
Harshada here.
Yes, Harshada.
Actually, it was mentioned in the earlier case study because the auditor was not able to take a confirmation from the daters, right? Regarding there are some restrictions or they are not getting the responses and all. So in that they are allowed to take a alternative as a considered as a alternative procedure, and they can go ahead with that. So in that you have mentioned it should be documented. Though I was not actually clear about the documented means but with the audit means from where exactly we need to audit the documentation.
Okay. So now once again, what you will do is as you will move further in your subsequent sessions, you will get more clarity around the documentation. So what do you mean by documentation? But to help you understand this part, see, anything that the auditor will do, let's suppose as an auditor, you go ask questions from the management. You obtain some information. Let's suppose you take the calculation of depreciation. In this particular case, for example, you have obtained invoices, e-way bills, You have obtained bank statements wherein you are checking the payments, whether the debtor has made the payment or not. So all of these documents which are obtained, this is the property, or you can say this is the documentation of whom? Can you tell me? Can you tell me, Harshda? This is the documentation of whom?
These are pertaining to the entity or the firm?
Yes. So that means these all documents belong to the management.
Right.
Right? As an auditor, what are you doing on that? You are checking that.
Right.
So if you obtain these documents, take a copy of that and keep it with you.
Okay.
Will that be considered as if it's an audit document? No. Why? Because that's the document of the management. As an auditor, what is it that you have done on this? So you may say that I have checked the invoice. So somewhere you will write, maybe in an Excel file, in Word file, on that invoice itself, that I have checked this invoice. I have checked this e-way bill. I have checked this payment belongs to party X, which was made on that particular day, and this payment was fully received. So this is the procedure which you have performed and which you are writing. So it is considered that something which is documented is done. For example, if let's suppose as an auditor you do 100 procedures, but you don't write it,
Okay.
then tomorrow, let's suppose if I as a regulator come to you and I ask you that you are the auditor, what is it that you do? So you start explaining everything verbally. So I'll say, no, I don't agree with this. You have not done anything. Okay, so your documentation has to speak. So you'll say, see, this is my documentation. This is what I have checked. Everything is written over there. Everything is documented over there. Okay, and then I don't need you to sit with me to explain everything. I'll go through this. So that is what you understand about documentation. So everything which the auditor will perform, he needs to document it.
Okay.
Now the documentation could be of various forms. You can write it maybe on a piece of paper, taking a pen. You can prepare that on an Excel, a presentation, a Word file. The mode could be anything, but the documentation has to be there. Okay, so in this particular case, auditor was unable to perform some part of this primary procedure. I'll call it as primary. Why? Because the first requirement is to obtain confirmation. So let's suppose 50 confirmations were sent, 30 were received, 20 are pending. So what will he do? He will say, I rolled out 50 confirmations, 30 are received, and 30 were found to be okay. 20 are pending. For 20, because they were pending, I followed up. I sent reminders. Again, I sent reminders. Didn't receive anything. Then I moved on to some other procedures. Why? Because I have to complete the audit. And those alternate procedures are again as per the requirement of auditing standard. It's not as per the whim and fancy of the auditor. No. Again, what the auditing standard will require, I'll perform. And those were found to be appropriate. And on an overall basis, with the help of external plus alternative, I am fine as far as this particular account is concerned. So this is what you call as documentation. And this is also very, very commonly called as working paper of the auditor or working papers of the auditor. Clear?
Okay. Okay. Sure. Thank you.
Sure. Yes. Anyone else? Any more queries? Aditya is asking, sir, in reasonable assurance and in limited assurance, just the quantity of procedure? Yes, I would say yes. See, the quality has to be ensured in whatever you check. Yeah, of course, the quantity is something which will be reduced. Broadly, you can say that. Anubhav is asking, sir, like there are net 27 AS that we are supposed no, so all of these things are part of your course curriculum. So whatever is there in your course curriculum, that is something you need to do. So you can just go through your course curriculum. Therein it is defined. Mohammed is asking, sir, will you provide? Yes. So this presentation that we have discussed, in the previous session today. So this will be available. Yeah. So this is something which can serve as a notes for study. Okay. Along with that, you should also go through your study material for sure to practice more and more questions. Okay.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
How will we able to recognize review engagement?
You will be able to recognize on the basis of your engagement with the management. See, as an auditor, you will not enter the office of the company without agreeing on the work with them. Yes or no? Let's suppose tomorrow ABC Private Limited calls you that you come and perform some work. Only then you will go there, or you will go there on your own. Tell me.
Only when they will call.
Yes.
Only
So
when
when they
they
will
will
call
call.
you, so they will specify, they will agree with you that this is the work you need to do. And you will sign an agreement with them. That is what you call as engagement letter. So that is how you will get to know about. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Anyone else? Any more queries?
Okay,
I
anyone
think,
having query, you may ask.
yes. So I think BOS, I'm just about to say this. So any queries that you have for the BOS team, they are also here to help you on your queries.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
So the standard on quality control was more about code of conduct, like how the company should perform their work, how the
That,
environment should be.
no, so that is more about how the firm should conduct their work, not the company. And when we say firm, we
Okay.
are talking about firm of chartered accountants.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so their conduct, their quality procedures, what all policies they should have in terms of staff, how the staff should be trained, how they should take care of their projects, whether the staff should be available in respect of some projects. If that is not available, what are the course of action they will have? How is the leadership going to function? What is the role of leadership? What is the thought process? So all of these aspects, similar to what you see in case of a company, a professional firm, a firm of chartered accountants also needs to maintain that.
Okay, sir.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, I think no. So students, today, as we come to the end of today's session, we have completed our chapter 1, nature, objectives and scope of audit. And first of all, on behalf of all of you, I would like to thank Achal sir for this wonderful session. And I think all the queries of students are resolved by sir only. So any more queries regarding chapter 1? I think sir have resolved already all of the queries. So thank you for attending today's session. And now our next session will be on Monday, that is 3rd of March. The timing will be same, 2:30 p.m. to 5 p.m. So thank you all. See you in the next session. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thanks, sir. Thanks so much. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.